Voice of Safety podcast. And today I want to thank you for listening. You have made it possible for September to be the month with the highest number of downloads ever. So this trend of podcast growing is continuing, and we hope it will continue in the next months. So if you know anybody who's interested in mental health from a critical perspective, they can listen to our podcast. Now, why am I doing this video beyond wanting to thank you for listening? Well, the reason is that when I say this is a podcast interested in critical mental health care, what I'm saying is that there is a need, I think, for this discussion. Why? Because the mainstream discussion in social media, and if you read newspaper articles, or if you look at any information on the web on the current mental health system and the state of services, very often, not always, but very often, you'll find that there is a concern about rules not being followed properly, about the NICE guidelines not being followed properly, about different types of guidance and rules not being followed. And don't get me wrong, I think that's important. It's important that we all follow the rules. But the reason why I wanted to start a podcast was that I felt that the rules in mental health services themselves were wrong. And so the fact that rules are adhered to is not the solution. It creates a situation where for the past decades we've been trying to create services and systems where coercive and controlling systems are in place to create safety, and admissions have gone up. Forced admissions have gone up in the past decades. So this is not working. Now what I see is that as I discuss with Matt and others on the podcast, as I discuss the need for open door systems, for less coercive systems that put their emphasis on creating relations of trust, not of suspicion, I can see that this is having an impact on people. And so there is discussions about, why don't we move towards the Trieste model? But at the same time, discussions about, why were there ligature points in this ward? Why was it that possible? Why were observations not carried out properly? Now, observations are basically making sure, watching somebody continuously so that they don't end their life on the ward. Now, obviously, what happens when observations are done very well is that if somebody has no hope and wants to end their life, what they'll do is say, I'm fine now. They'll go home and then they'll do it at home. So at that point, you haven't achieved much really respecting the rules. Same thing with ligature points. If you can't hang yourself on the ward, you'll find another way to do it. It's easy to get around these limits. So that's, I think, the completely wrong direction. But if you go to Trieste in mental health services, in mental health centres, you will find ligature points everywhere, because that's not the emphasis. The emphasis is trying to create a therapeutic environment where people feel better and therefore they don't want to end their life. Not environments that are horrible and controlling so that they'll feel miserable but won't be able practically to end their life, which, as I said, doesn't work anyway. So we need to pay attention at what direction we're going towards. And so some of you may say, but when we will abolish psychiatric hospitals, we will do that. But for the time being, we have psychiatric hospitals, so we need to be really controlling. But how are these places going to be destroyed? How are we going to change things? If we think that a politician is going to come from above in a top-down way and say, from now on, we're just closing everything, that's not going to work, because nobody's going to be prepared. Nobody's going to know what to do. Top-down solutions are again a repetition of the same problem. So we need the same solutions which bring to the same problem. So what we need is to have discussions within services and push for the world to be opened up a bit at a time. For, saying, well, this door's always been locked. Does it have to really be locked? Let's open it, see what happens. Let's see if we can deal with what happens with this door that doesn't seem to have a big reason to be locked. Let's see if we can use the crisis homes that we have for people that want to be helped. And so you start entering a process where it becomes a bit at a time the system more open, and a bit at a time more safe. And every time you do one step, there's other steps that become possible. Now, this is the direction that I would like to see us aiming for. And I think this is a direction that we should all be